Tonight on LTC News, feeding the hungry.
It started on Easter. We did 10 meals Easter night. We are now up to 80 meals a night. We also give out clothes, blankets, gloves, socks, underwear, blankets, tents, you name it.
Virtual field trips.
And I got the opportunity to buy the bus. And when I did, it was, wait a minute, if I get a whiteboard, then I'll have a classroom. But then my wife was like, if we had some way to connect to the internet, you could go anywhere to teach. And I was like, you're right.
In the search for Moses Harris.
Today we are here for a peaceful march. We are here to send our message out. We are here for our questions to be answered.
Welcome to LTC News. I'm your host, Matt Nelson. Governor Baker announced the end of the 10 p.m. curfew that has been in place for non-essential workers. The governor cited dropping numbers in key COVID data points as prompting the decision. Despite this, capacity limits remain in effect. A wave of MBTA service cuts has gone into effect, canceling weekend runs for several commuter rail stops, including Lowell. To compensate for this, the LRTA has begun offering weekend bus service to the MBTA station in Burlington. In a 5-2 vote, the Lowell School Committee voted to bring back 3% of students on February 22nd, with an increase to 25% coming March 1st. The committee had previously decided on February and March 1st for the dates, but this was changed given the present conditions of the pandemic. Last spring, Patricia Hyort started bringing meals to unhoused people around the city at night. She's kept at it, and today Matthew 2535, a small group consisting of Patricia and a partner, continues to feed people in need around Lowell every night throughout the pandemic.
It started on Easter. We did 10 meals Easter night. We are now up to 80 meals a night. We also give out clothes, blankets, gloves, socks, underwear, blankets, tents, you name it. I get up about 7. We go until about midnight, sometimes 1. We cook. Today it's meatball subs. And then we make bags that have silverware and napkins, potato chips, candy, a whole bunch of stuff. We also put granola bars in it for a snack for tomorrow morning in case they don't get breakfast. We have safe serve certifications. So everything is cooked properly and it's packaged separately. We take care of all of the camps between Lowell and Chelmsford. There's a huge camp on the river. There's 20 people camped there. Most of them Southeast Asians who cannot go or will not go or were not taken into the shelter. And we feed everybody we come in contact with. These people they need to eat, they need to be warm, and they need to survive. And they're human beings. They're incredible. They take care of each other. They care about each other. They know where everyone is. They keep track of every single person in those groups. And they look out for each other. We have a couple guys. We got Joe. This guy's amazing. Okay, he's an amazing guy. He needs a job. Okay, a lot of these guys want to work. You can't get a job if you're homeless. You can't get an apartment if you don't have a job. It's a vicious cycle. And that's what these people have gotten stuck in. He said to me one time, I need a chance to make it, a chance to do better. That message has been loud and clear from each and every one of these people. Give me a chance. They're nurses, CNAs, teachers, and they're homeless. In a pandemic, we need them. What would I hope that Lowell would do for them? Get them into stable housing. We've got plenty. We have empty mill buildings. Put them in a place to live, a safe environment where they can thrive. Take these mill buildings and turn them into not luxury apartments, put them into affordable housing.
As we look forward to November when Lowell's new voting system will be enacted, those interested in running for the several new seats available might be confused as to where to start. This is where Lowell Votes comes in with their new Candidate Empowerment and Readiness Training, or CERT program. Lowell Votes volunteer Mary TAURAS has the details.
So Lowell Votes started around 2014, 2015 as a coalition among residents who were interested in increasing voter turnout, especially in local elections for city council and school committee. All the city councilor and school committee candidates run to represent the whole city citywide. That's how it's been for decades. And this new system, which has gone through a process of community meetings and deliberation, will give 3 at-large seats for the city council and 8 new districts. So residents will be able to run and represent their local community from their lived experience better. It'll give POC candidates, communities of color, more access to being able to run, because it can be expensive running citywide, and they can run and represent their district. With the new hybrid system, the school committee will also look a little differently. There will be 4 district seats for the school committee, which brings us to 6. And then the city council will internally elect the mayor as they do, select the mayor. And that will be the 7th school committee member. So with the new changes to the voting system, it's really important to consider how are we going to be able to successfully transition to this new system, to have local representation that communities of color especially, but all Lowell residents feel represent their community well, right? So this is such a huge opportunity for the city and all of us as residents and for the voters to think about in your communities, who do you go to get information? Who do you think would be a good representative for your district? And whether it's this year or in 2 years, or later down the line, to consider either yourself running or who you could be supporting to run for local office. So Lowell Votes' new CERT series, it stands for Candidate Empowerment and Readiness Training, is open to candidates for office and their support volunteers or staff to help them run their campaign, and will provide information on basic campaign operations, engaging with the public, some fundraising, and a lot on how to be successful as an elected official once you get in. It will be 3 Saturdays, 3 sessions, March 20th, March 27th, and April 3rd. The application deadline is February 18th. I want to thank all of the Lowell Votes Coalition partners, Coalition for a Better Acre, Lowell Alliance, the Cambodian Mutual Assistance Association, Merrimack Valley Project, and the Latinx Community Center for Empowerment, and other local organizations and residents that have been a part of the Get Out the Vote efforts in the past several years and are looking to get more involved this year. And for our new CERT series, the Candidate Empowerment and Readiness Training, just big thank yous to the Massachusetts Alliance, Commonwealth Seminar, and New American Leaders, organizations that are all helping us with this first iteration of the program.
Like many, a 6th grade science teacher from the Wayne School is teaching his students from a mobile classroom. What makes John King's situation unique is that this location is a bus. He bought the bus during the pandemic and turned it into a classroom to teach his students and take them on virtual field trips. In our next segment, we'll hear more about his innovative way to teach students during this pandemic.
Well, living in West Townsend, we didn't have cable, and so I had to go down to the Townsend Public Library, which was wonderful, but it was closed, but I could connect to their Wi-Fi. So I would be sitting in my car in their parking lot, teaching from sitting in my car. And I don't know if you've ever sat in a car for 6 hours, but it's not very comfortable and it's not very fun. And, people drive by and they look at you like, why are you sitting here for hours on end? And so I knew that wasn't going to be sustainable. And I knew that I was going to have to do something different in order to teach properly. I mean, You can't do the same thing sitting in a chair that you can if you have a whiteboard to write on and you put your notes up. And it's a lot different when you have a classroom than when you're sitting in your car. So I knew I had to do something else that would be more sustainable. And I got the opportunity to buy the bus. And when I did, it was, wait a minute, if I get a whiteboard, then I'll have a classroom. But then my wife was like, if we had some way to connect to the internet, you could go anywhere to teach. And I was like, you're right. What a great idea. And so from that, we changed our cell phone plan so that we could get a Wi-Fi hotspot. And now we can teach from anywhere. The first field trip we did was to Plum Island. And we were just looking at signs of weathering and erosion. And then we went out to the dinosaur footprints in Holyoke. And I could never do these things with my kids. And then our biggest trip so far has been to the Cape. Once I figured out that I could go anywhere, it's like, okay, maybe we can get through this year. A lot of my kids had never been to the Cape before. A lot of my kids had never been to, I had never been to the dinosaur footprints before. But I could never do that if I was in person. If I was in person, I couldn't take the kids to Holyoke, a 2.5 hour trip from school. By the time you get there, you have to turn around and get home again. It's really opening up doors. I could never take the kids to the Cape as much as I would like to, but I could go to the Cape and then project it through Zoom. And it was a time that so many of the kids were like, we've never done this before. And I'm like, neither have I. But it was totally safe for them and fun. And, they got to watch Mr. King do a faux weather report, and then they had to do their own, and they had to tape themselves. And, it was another whole activity for us to do. As long as we're remote, I've always trying to get a trip planned, at least one a month. When they find out that I'm teaching from a bus, people are like, that's crazy, but kind of cool. It's been what it's been until we can get back where we want to be, and that's in the classroom, safe. And as soon as I get my 2 inoculations, I'm back in the classroom because I do not like teaching from a bus.
On December 19th, 2020, a Lowell man named Moses Harris disappeared into the Concord River after an encounter with the Lowell Police Department ended with one of the officers pursuing Moses out of a parking lot in the early hours of the morning. Every Saturday since then, for 6 weeks running, protesters have gathered outside the Lowell Police Station at a series of marches led by Moses Harris's family and the local organization Community Advocates for Justice and Equality.
Today we are here for a peaceful march. We are here to send our message out. We are here for our questions to be answered. We have more questions to ask than answer here. Nobody answering our question. Where is Moses? Look at Moses. Justice for Moses. That's the reason why we are here.
On December 19th of 2020, we responded for a report of a domestic battery and a vandalism. The suspect, Moses Harris, had left the area before the officers arrived. Officers were called to the scene again a short time later after Mr. Harris had returned to the victim's home. He had again left prior to police arrival. One of our officers who was checking parking lots did locate Mr. Harris's vehicle in the rear of a location on Lawrence Street. A short time later, Mr. Harris exited his vehicle. Our officer exited his vehicle as well. He was by himself. He began issuing verbal commands to Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris was not complying with those commands. Our officer unholstered his taser and displayed the laser downwards. He took off running towards the Concord River. Our officer did radio that to dispatch. Our officer then also radioed that Mr. Harris was down in the back of the parking lot and looked like he was about to jump in the river. Then shortly thereafter, the officer radioed that Mr. Harris had indeed gone in the water.
The Lowell police, we won't be having a peaceful march if they have given us the information. If they have given us the answers, we won't be seeking answers.
We want a copy of the police report. We want to know the names of the officers involved. And all I can say is that the family is looking for the FBI to step in at this point, and they want a federal investigation. There was a 23-year-old officer involved. He was the first one that found Moses. They were like, no, we normally don't send one officer for a domestic situation, but that officer was searching the area and he found them. Okay, so he should have waited for backup. He should have never engaged with Moses by himself, not knowing the state of mind he was in, not knowing what was going on. I am a restraint trainer. I deal with agitated people, mental health specialist. I am a certified trainer with de-escalation techniques and CPI, which is crisis prevention intervention. So I train my staff because I work with at-risk children. I work with kids in DYS and DCF. If I'm an agitator of a situation, I'll back off and I'll call one of my staff in. He should have backed off when Moses started running. So to me, you chased him into that river. That's what I see.
2 of our own canines searched the length of the river banks on both sides from the point where Mr. Harris entered. Detectives have gone out a number of times just to search different areas of the river banks. On 2 separate occasions, the Tewksbury Police Department has provided their aerial drone. Their aerial drone has searched. The State Police Air Wing has come out multiple times. The underlying incident report is a domestic violence report, and under state law, all domestic violence reports are exempt from the public records law. That's a law that makes those exempt. And then also, it's an ongoing investigation, and that's also an exemption from the state public record laws.
We've been in touch with Elizabeth Warren's camp. Their response is, Lowell Police said they're working on it. Lori Trahan's camp, same thing. Lowell Police said they're working on it. So basically, it's continue pass the buck.
We want all parents, community members in Lowell and the Merrimack Valley at large in Massachusetts to please join us in solidarity. We want the Lowell Police to back off so that the FBI can come in and conduct a more rapid investigation as to what happened on the 19th of December to Moses.
We will keep fighting for you. We love you. We miss you.
In this week's edition of Sunspot, Lowell Sun Enterprise editor Chris Scott sits down with Congresswoman Lori Trahan.
Representative Lori Trahan is making a repeat appearance on Sunspot, which is the newspaper's contribution to Lowell Telecommunication Corp's weekly news show, LTC News. Lori, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to see you again, and I'm glad you're feeling better. I mean, we could spend all day talking to you. There's so much going on in your world, but I think let's just hit the big gorilla in the room right away. You tested positive for COVID. I think it was last week.
Yeah.
You're quarantining. I'm glad to hear that your husband and daughters have tested negative. Again, that's great news. Just tell us a little bit about what you're going through in that regard and how you've been feeling, and when you think you'll be clear to resume operations as normal.
Yeah, no, so thank you. Thank you for having me on. And thank you so much for, all the well wishes that I've received for Dave and the girls and for me. Yeah. I can't say that I'm feeling great, but, my symptoms are mild. It's mostly fatigue and head and body aches. So I definitely consider myself to be extremely fortunate in that regard. Dave and the girls did test negative again, and they're not showing any symptoms. So as much as I miss seeing them, we've been able to quarantine away from each other successfully so far. So, and I have been able to continue working over the past week. Right. And, my team hasn't skipped a beat either. So
do you have any idea where you might have contracted the virus?
Yeah, so like a lot of folks who have gotten the virus at this point, I'm not exactly sure where I contracted it. Of course, I've been going back and forth to Washington pretty regularly, but I've been getting tested pretty regularly as well. I was surprised when my test on last Thursday came back positive. And, we immediately got in touch with everyone that I had been in contact since the last time I tested negative to make sure that they're getting tested or quarantining themselves. And so I do think that you become acutely aware of the obligation that you have to look out for each other in the middle of this crisis. And like I said, I've been grateful to all the folks who have reached out to ensure that, we're all doing well.
Lori, I just, a pat on the back for going public with it and sharing your story. I'll tell you, a question that's been asked of me about you is, boy, do you think there's any possibility that she contracted the virus in DC, during the riots? That's a question that people had on their mind. I'm throwing it out there. Do you think there's any possibility of that?
I don't think it's possible. I don't rule anything out just because this is a novel virus, but that was on January 6th. I was tested 4 times since then. All those tests came back negative. And, I had flown, back and forth to Washington since then. So it really is hard, to pinpoint, especially, when you are getting on flights, when you are going into, onto the House floor, when you are grocery shopping, right? So I think all of that's the hard part. And that's why I think folks are just vigilant, right? I mean, I'm a double mask wearer when I get on an airplane, I'm the one with the KN95 and my cloth mask over it. And even still with all those precautions, I got it myself. So it's just a reminder that we all have to stay vigilant and keep following those protocols.
You co-authored a letter this week with Chris Pappas, Seth Molden, I think a couple of others, concerning the Merrimack River and the water quality there. Can you tell us what's behind that and what you're hoping to accomplish there?
This has been a priority for us since the start of my first term. We know that combined sewerage overflow is an issue that's really inhibiting our communities, and it's hurting our waterways. And so, we have joined forces, all the members who sit on the mighty Merrimack, Congressman Pappas, Custer, Moulton, and me, so that we can protect this beautiful resource and also put a focus on making water infrastructure and CSOs a priority. There's no question that the federal government has walked back its support of investing in infrastructure, in water infrastructure. And, we've been pushing that ball so that we can increase those federal investments so that communities like Manchester and Lowell and Lawrence have the ability to upgrade those their infrastructure systems and protect the river that needs, to be there for generations to come, for our urban, gateway cities that sit on that river, but for everyone in between.
We've got a bit of a home field advantage here with Gina McCarthy and John Kerry having the president's ear. Have you talked to those two, about this issue at all, or do you intend to?
Yes, I absolutely intend to. In fact, it is wonderful to see how many people from Massachusetts are a part of this administration. I think it gives us a lot of, hope in terms of, being able to pick up the phone. But there's also a lot of folks who have a ton of experience. And so, yes, I'm excited about connecting with both Gina McCarthy and Secretary Kerry on, how we can work together to make sure that the Commonwealth benefits from, these investments. And I think that that's going to be not in infrastructure, but also, as they tackle climate change and make investments there as well.
Tell us about what some of your priorities are and some of the things that you would like to address in this term.
Yeah, so if I could just have the opportunity, I'd love to just recap a few of the wins
That's fine.
that we had in our first term. I know that right now there's a lot of polarizing rhetoric, but we were still able to get a number of our priorities across the finish line and signed into law. The Nashua River, we introduced legislation to designate portions of the Nashua, the Squanicook, and the Nissitissit rivers as scenic under the National Wild and Scenic River System. We increased workers' access to employee-sponsored retirement funds. I introduced and the Congress passed into law the Bipartisan Small Employer Retirement Savings Auto Enrollment Credit Act. I know it's a mouthful, but I introduced that with Mike Kelly, a Republican from Pennsylvania, and it provides tax incentives to small businesses to encourage them to automatically enroll their workers in a retirement plan like a 401k. At the beginning of the pandemic, the most susceptible in our communities, which were our seniors, were struggling to get tested for the virus. And I introduced and had passed the Ensuring Free Coronavirus Testing for Seniors Act. And it basically promoted free COVID-19 testing for seniors who are covered through, Medicare Advantage. More recently, we are seeing an alarming rise in service members dying by suicide. So in the last Defense Authorization Bill, I included the Comprehensive Review of Military Suicide Act, and that passed late last year. That legislation was not only born out of consultation with, the American Psychiatric Association, but also with a conversation of a mom. I had a mom of a service member in the district whose son's unit had experienced an alarming number of suicides, and she flagged it for me. And now this legislation requires that the Secretary of Defense establish a multidisciplinary review board to obtain necessary data so that we're, improving the military's ability to prevent, future service member suicide. So, and then finally, the one you've probably heard me talk about the most, but one of my top priorities was securing passage of the Leonel Rondon Pipeline Safety Act, strengthening pipeline safety regulations, increasing safety standards so that we never see another tragedy like the Merrimack Valley gas explosions happen again. And we were finally able to get this piece of legislation across the finish line late last year, signed into law. Super grateful to Senator Markey for his strong partnership, which was critical to ensuring that we were able to get it done.
We'll be back in 2 weeks with another guest. So everyone out there, stay safe and stay healthy and wear a mask.
And that does it for this edition of LTC News. You can find us on LTC channels 8, 95, and 99, online at ltc.org, on Roku in the LTC News playlist, on Facebook at LTC Lowell, or on our YouTube page. I'm your host, Matt Nelson. Thanks for joining us.